But sadly, of course, he's still alive. Hi there, you're listening to Unnatural Selection, the show about newsy type stuff and things. My name is George.
My name is Adam.
And with our powers combined, we are Unnatural Selection. Make sure you visit us at our salubrious home on the web, unnaturalshow.com.
2/3 of Unnatural Selection. The overseas jaunts of both Tom and myself have really interrupted our flow, I think, over the last month or so.
Our fan will be deeply upset. So
yes, yeah. Sorry, Jerry. But yeah, I mean, we could just spend like the last few episodes, the whole episode talking about Trump. But I'm happy to say, this week, some things actually happened in Australia, which we can talk about.
Yeah, and in the world. I mean, we could talk about, the women on the steps of the Capitol saying that they were going to release the Epstein list, and Marjorie Taylor Greene saying the only thing I think I've ever agreed with Marjorie Taylor Greene on is that she was going to use her parliamentary privilege to say the names on the floor of Congress, which you go, girl, I guess. But there's not really that much there until there was that report that I sent you guys, the video of the senior DOJ official who was on a fake Hinge date with an undercover reporter, and where he basically said that, we're going through the Epstein files and we're just going to redact anyone who's a Republican or a friend. So that's fun.
Cool.
But not,
cool.
Not
no,
news,
I was thinking
not news
more maybe that Donald Trump may or may not have passed away. Obviously didn't.
Shuffled off this mortal coil. Yeah, sadly not.
There was still some clenching that happened earlier this week.
Yeah, the internet was all
the excitement.
Very excited about it, as though they don't know that would then indicate the rise of JD Vance, who is like Trump but competent. So I don't really know what everyone was excited about there. But he
has a bruised hand, George. What does it mean?
It means he's an old, fat, late 70s piece of shit who ate hamburgers his entire life, who's probably in poor health. But he's got fat cankles. Does it mean he's having a stroke? Probably not. Probably just means he was a bit sick for a couple of days. So
they had to put an IV in his hand potentially.
Just everyone was in conniptions over it. Don't get me wrong, I will be the first to raise a glass to his untimely, or very timely at this point, demise. But it's call me when it happens. I'm not getting out of bed for less than an internal hemorrhage.
And it won't change too many things in the world, because the world does in fact go on, just like the war in Gaza, which is just, despite all protestations and international condemnations, the Israelis are just like, no, we're doing it. Even people in Israel are getting sick of it. They're protesting on the streets.
Yeah, well, there was, I think I saw a report that there was about 300,000 people that were protesting in Israel in this last week, which is about 3% of the population out on the streets.
And the thing is, the reason why they're doing it now is because all the reservists are getting called up again to do this new offensive. I'm sure
Gaza. That's part of it. I also think that even in the Israeli media bubble that most of them surely live in, even they have, are receiving images of the horrors that are unfolding in Gaza at this point, and as ideological as one can be about the conflict. I think images of starving children dying from starvation and just visual. You can see they have CNN World in Israel, they have Instagram, they can get Al Jazeera if they want to. It's not as though
they're not in an information vacuum. They're not in 30s.
It's not North Korea. If you want access to this information, you can find it. Every other day, there was a video that showed up in my timeline a week ago, 2 weeks ago. It was just a girl between, sort of would have been 12 or 13, getting a thing of water for her family, and you just see her just vaporized by a drone strike. And I was like, I don't see how that could represent any sort of particular threat to the Israeli, populace. It's just pure cruelty at this point. It's certainly war crimes. I think there's a plausible case for genocide, as we've talked about in the past, based on the Genocide Convention. It's looking real bad what they're doing in Gaza, and I think even Israelis that are in their local bubble are sort of catching on to it at this point.
And speaking of looking bad, so this week, or last week rather, the news was that very clearly, from multiple angles, the Israelis bombed a hospital, not once, but twice, because there was a camera there.
Yeah, so they said without evidence that it was a Hamas camera that was beaming images to, I don't know how you can tell a Hamas camera from a Reuters camera, but as it turns out, they couldn't, because it was a Reuters employed journalist who was, live streaming visuals, as he had done for some time, from the top of that hospital. Is about 5 stories high, and there's video of the attack. They get bombed, a bunch of people rush in to help, and within minutes it's bombed again, with a tank round, killing up to 20 people. 5 journalists, were murdered. Other hospital staff, civilians. Like, it's, I don't know, man. Like, you just see stuff like this and you go, oh, Benjamin Netanyahu says it was Israel deeply regrets the tragic mishap that occurred today at the Nasser hospital in Gaza. Israel values the work of journalists, medical staff, and all civilians, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, and all the comments are just absolutely just cutting sick on him, saying, okay, but like, if it was a terrible mishap, why did a second mishap hit the building several minutes after? When they're like, I'm not calling Israel a terrorist state, but this is a noted terrorist tactic. It's called double tapping, where you hit a site, you have a suicide bomb or something go off, people rush into the area to help those affected, and then you set off another bomb, blowing up additional people. Like, that is a tactic that terrorists use in order to cause maximum destruction. And yeah, again, no evidence provided by the Israeli military. All of a sudden it's a terrible mishap, but like, clearly deliberately targeted, clearly done twice with the intent of, killing. It's a hospital. That is an international war crime to target a hospital with ordnance. You are not allowed to do that. Doesn't matter, what Antifa fucking Hamas super soldiers with their extensive tunnel system might be existing underneath a hospital. You're still not allowed to bomb hospitals because people are in there.
It really feels like they're just searching for targets at this point.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of the thing with, the military is at a point, I guess, where they've bombed everything. Like, Hamas has been fairly decimated. They still exist, and then there are organizational structures still in place. But like,
you guys saw that video that I sent you and Tom the other day of the side by side of some very populated area of the Gaza Strip, 3 years ago versus today. The whole thing's been fucking leveled. Like, the side by side is almost unrecognizable as the same place. Massive high rises that have just been destroyed. The whole area has been flattened. You can see on satellite footage, whole populated areas that were built up before have just been completely destroyed, flattened, wiped out. Yeah, it's bombed the vast majority of all infrastructure in Gaza. Like, that, it's not we're looking for targets. It's like we're looking for this building still standing left to bomb.
Yeah,
right?
And it's I wonder whether or not, if the military is trained to kill and attack and everything else, like, at a certain point, like, you just start doing things because you're trying to look. Yeah, you're looking for things to hammer.
If you're a hammer, everything's a nail, right? And there's just no regard given to, any of the civilian
discretion or
no. It's just a complete free for all. It's disgusting, man. I keep seeing these videos and I have to switch off because I can't keep seeing this just flood of carnage that's coming across the screens. Like, whether or not it's a genocide is for the international, criminal court to decide. But like, regardless of that, we are seeing what can only be described as human rights violations. War crimes. Like, all of this, whatever you call it, it's wrong and it needs to stop, right? Like, and this is a comedy show, I swear. We're going to get to some comedy soon, but like, I just, it's just.
It's hard to wrap your head around because it doesn't make any sense.
It's so hard to keep exposing
yourself
to
why would you keep doing this
violent imagery when it's just why like, at a certain point, I have the privilege as a person here in Australia to turn away from it when it upsets me too much, and I understand people obviously in Gaza don't have the privilege of turning away from it because they're living in it, But it's so upsetting to see it all the time, all day, every day, multiple days a week. Just, like there was that story about the cafe near the water being bombed, a couple of weeks ago, a month ago, whatever it was. And it's just like, man, there's kids' fluffy toys just like covered in viscera and blood. And it's just like, I can't keep looking at this. It's actually like, it's really upsetting, like there's just no need. It's so unnecessary. And I think about my son who's 2 years old, and I look at these children who are 2 years old, starving, and I'm like, man, how can you not have empathy for other people, for their children? How can you as an adult, I'm sure Netanyahu's got kids. I bet he's got kids. You must understand if someone did this to my kids, this is how I would feel, right?
That's why he's a monster. He's a psychopath. He doesn't have empathy.
I really do. I do think he is a sociopath.
An ideological, self-serving psychopath.
Yeah.
Like to have the longevity of his political career that he's had, to keep pressing the war in the way he has.
Yeah. To extend his political life, really.
Yeah. But also like it's you know what I mean? Like he's not thinking about other people. It's about whatever belief system and way he's able to rationalize it in his head. So he creates his own reality, I would suggest. And unfortunately, he's got a cabinet
that are all happy to enable it. Yeah, are pushing for it in some instances.
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, they've sort of said that they're formally going to occupy Gaza City, and that they're making formal annexations of areas of the West Bank. That basically looking to divvy it up and settle it in such a way as to not have any sort of possibility of a contiguous Palestinian state. And, I don't understand. This is not funny at all. We'll get back to funny stuff, I promise. I just don't understand how you can have this much hate in your heart for human beings. Like, you must know that other human beings are just human beings when it comes down to it. He must know that. I don't know, man. It's so upsetting.
I think he's been in the system for so long, he's just cooked.
Yeah.
Like they've been in that bubble, not him, but the cabinet as well, the far right cabinet. They've been in that Israeli bubble for so long, just sniffing their own farts in terms of their belief systems and their culture, that they've lost all perspective on what it means to be human.
Yeah. I wonder if this is how other nations saw the Americans after the 9/11 attacks. It's just they were just in a rage and just killing anything that moved. Is it the same sort of thing? I don't know if they'll ever come to their senses. I think they need to be stopped. Like, I think the international community needs to, like with Bosnia, they just need to stop them from, they will just keep killing until everyone is dead, I think. They just need to stop them. Otherwise, they will ethnically cleanse the Gaza Strip.
Yeah, maybe. But I mean, the US won't do anything, so it's basically the UK and France are the ones that, maybe Germany would be the ones to potentially step in that case. But I don't know. It's, and then you can't, it would have to be a European power, I'd imagine, because if it was an Arabic power, that would be very complicated.
Yeah, and there's the Arab League, which has been sort of making commentary from the sidelines and all this sort of stuff. But I don't think there's just not enough international credibility there, I think, to find an off-ramp. It's at the end of the day, it's up to the Israelis to stop.
The other thing is, again, I've said this before, I think at some point the Israeli people need to actually
Well, and that's what we're seeing. We're 300,000 people on the streets. That is a good chunk of the Israeli populace. It shows that they're not all, sort of behind this in the way that they might have been, right after October 7th. Like it's a lot of people are turning against it. It's just like how much longer is it going to go for? How many more people need to die before, something gets done about it? I don't know. It just feels so intractable. Yeah. Anyway.
So in other news, the US government's bought a 10% stake in Intel.
Hard pivot. We're going to talk about chips now. So
I love chips, like
silicon
salt
chips?
and vinegar.
No.
Oh, sorry. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
right.
more the
different kind of chips.
System on chip kind of chips.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just hard pivot away from the distressing Gaza news. There's no fun resolution to that. We're just going to talk about Intel.
Chips.
So President Trump said last week that Intel, the troubled Silicon Valley chip maker, has agreed to sell the US government a 10% stake in its business, worth $8.9 billion, in one of the largest government interventions in a US company since the rescue of the auto industry after the 2008 financial crisis. Now, you might be saying, hang on, didn't the CHIPS Act that Joe Biden passed a year or two ago invest all of this money into these companies anyway for the express purposes of accelerating domestic chip development in the United States without the US government owning a part of the companies? To which I would say, yes, stranger, you are reasonably well informed about this, about the CHIPS Act, about the inner workings of government US domestic policy. So essentially, the CHIPS Act was a $50 billion initiative from the Biden administration that was just going to give this money away to various companies in the form of grants and incentives and other tax breaks and other things in order to encourage domestic manufacturing of chips. Now, obviously, this has got to do with the AI race. This has got to do with, supply chains and sort of, American manufacturing sovereignty when it comes to, because a lot of these chips are built in TMC in Taiwan. Yeah, and obviously, given that they're a target for China's expansionist motivations.
What? There wasn't a big military rally like this week that scared living pants off most defense officials. That's fine. Don't worry about it.
So given the fact that obviously, expansion in the South China Sea is one of China's mandates, and they've explicitly said they're going to take back control of Taiwan at some point. It's, the American government under the Biden administration, put together this CHIPS Act, which with the idea of onshoring some of these critical supply chains, because microchips are in everything, from Internet of Things, your fridge. Now
they're in your fucking blender, man. They're in your fucking
Wi-Fi.
blender.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Anything with a screen or Bluetooth or any sort of connectivity to another thing requires a chip of some kind. And obviously having China in control of the trajectory of the 21st century economy, which is going to be predicated on chips and AI and other, technologies that are based on chips, then, it's probably not great for the American government to have such a strategic vulnerability. So that's why they did this. Now, what the President Trump has done is said, in exchange for this money, which was via grant, by the way, as someone who has applied for grants in my role as a proposal, bid writer, grants come with a lot of stipulations. It's very rare that you'll get a grant where it's just like, here's $11 billion, like, do your thing. It always comes with strings. There's reporting requirements. You can use the money for this. You can't use the money for that. You can use the money for staff working on this project. You can't use the money on capital expenditures and buying a big, boat for your executives, right? The money needs to be used in a specific way for the government. Yeah, $400 million Qatari jet, for example, not a valid expenditure for a grant, one would imagine. So, the purpose of these grants was to build up the domestic manufacturing in the chip industry. They already come with lots of strings and reporting requirements and then acquittals and all this sort of stuff. It's very strict in terms of how grants are measured for this reason. So Intel had already committed to doing things that the American government had wanted them to do with that money. And they still haven't gotten all the money. They've only gotten about $2 billion of the, whatever it is, $11 billion that they've been promised. And there's still $850 million owing. Apparently they've sent the remittance and apparently the American government's not paying. So there was this whole controversy where Trump was saying, the CEO of Intel's a big shithead and he should resign. And then all of a sudden, shortly thereafter, this deal emerges where Trump says, okay, we're still going to give you this money that was already promised for specific things that you've already agreed to and are working on. But now we want 10% of your company in exchange for it. And the Intel CEO said, fucking great. That's so good. And that's absolutely what we wanted this whole time. At a news conference.
While the gun to his head.
Yeah, keep smiling. Everybody's happy. Click. At a news conference, Mr. Trump said the agreement had come out of negotiations last week with Lip Bao Tan, Intel's chief executive. Quote, I said, I think it would be good having the United States as your partner. He agreed, and they've agreed to it, Mr. Trump said, and I think it's a great deal for them. Of course, the amount of money that is being given to Intel is is not in excess of the amount of the company that's being awarded to the United States. So there's like a gap of like $2 billion over and above. They've basically given the American government an extra $2 billion worth of free stock just for the privilege of taking their grant money.
Is it bad that the US government does directly? Like, is that not a better outcome on face value for the taxpayer, that there is equity?
That's what they would argue. That's certainly what the Trump administration would argue. But the thing that I don't think people are really talking about with all of this is that it kind of augurs a very different kind of, domestic manufacturing policy that the United States government has ever had. I mean, if you
almost like socialism,
that's socialism. If a country takes a part of an industry over and starts to own it, that's called nationalizing, and historically happens in communist and socialist states when they are taking back key infrastructure from there's a word for this in the business literature, which is called sovereign risk. Every time, like during the mining super profits tax debacle here in Australia in the early 2010s, where they were saying, well, the mining companies are making so much money, maybe for the mega profits, where they make over whatever it is, hundreds of millions of dollars in profits, for amounts over that, we should charge them a higher tax rate. Everyone said, you can't fucking do that. BHP's going to pull out. All the jobs are fucking going to go away. Santos is going to take a piss on Parliament House. They're all going to fucking leave. It's a risk. We know now that if we have more tax, well, we won't invest in Australia. It's just because Australia has a sovereign risk. The country might do something against us, and so we'll be forced because of the risk involved to pull our money out. Now, of course, it's horseshit because we're the ones that have the minerals. They're in our ground. If you're not going to get them here, you got to get them somewhere else. That's going to be more expensive.
Take them out of the moon. That's fine.
Exactly.
Just go to the moon and do a little light lithium mining.
The reason that these countries are invested in Western democratic nations like Australia and not other areas where there are minerals like the Congo is because it's easy to do business in Australia because there's a legal framework that ensures property rights and there's legal, mechanisms.
You don't have to pay off the local warlord to...
Exactly. Those kinds of, barriers to doing business obviously don't occur in Australia. So whether we charge them 15% tax or 20% tax, they're going to have to run it through their models and say, is it still worth it for us to do business here? And the answer is obviously going to be yes, because these companies make shitloads of profit. And so they would have to pay a higher tax. But they go, no, it's a sovereign risk. We can't do the mega tax. It would fucking kill industry. It's a sovereign risk. Meanwhile, Trump's literally nationalizing a portion of one of the largest businesses in America. And everyone's like, seems good to me. That's not a sovereign risk.
Ronald Reagan's like rolling over in his grave.
Ronald Reagan's ghost is having a fucking seizure looking at this. This is a nationalization of industry. And if they can do it with Intel, what's to say they can't do it with any other American? Now, I'm not saying that there's no precedent for some sort of government takeover, but in American history, it only happens when there's a crisis. So, for example, during the Second World War, there were measures like these deployed to convert particular industries into things that could manufacture stuff for the war effort, right? You stop building cars, you start building tanks.
Ford's building, Jeeps and shit. But
right. So there is precedent for this, but it's always as the result of a crisis, or the 2008 financial crisis where the banks got bailed out. Again, it was a loan. The American government gave loans to these companies that would say, as collateral, we're going to hold a stake in your company until these loans are paid back with interest to the consumer. And all those loans were paid back, and the American people made a profit off of them. But then the American government didn't continue owning Ford and Chrysler in perpetuity. It just seems to me like very much mob standover tactics. Like, well, if we're going to give you some money, Daddy's got to get his beak wet. Like, you got to kick back up to Tony Soprano, otherwise nobody gets to do business on this territory.
It's not. I mean, the Intel share price is down from say like 5 years ago, but
Intel has been struggling. Like, it's not
comparatively to its competition, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, and that's and I understand the need and the want to have policy from the government to change that, given its strategic importance, especially in the 21st century.
Everyone, George has graphs.
I've got graphs, people. Back of this is going to mean nothing to the listeners. Okay, you can see looking at this blue line, This is, Intel's CPU market share. And you can see it sort of reached its zenith at, 82.5% in 2016. And it's been on a steady decline since then to its current day, where it's about 60% of the market share. And its main competitor, AMD, has been creeping up from, sort of 20% up to about 40% as of, 2025.
It's because the AMD chips are better and cheaper.
Better and cheaper. So it's like, yeah, of course. Yeah. People still use Intel chips for gaming. You will see that, sort of in the industry, particular specialized chips might have a high gigahertz count or whatever. But yeah, on the whole, I've got an AMD chip in my computer because, yeah, exactly that reason. I looked at the equivalent Intel one, it was an extra $200 more, and I got the same performance out of this one. Seems like it's just as reliable. So I went with the AMD one instead. And even to the extent to which in desktop market share, AMD this year has passed Intel for the first time in terms of owning most of the market. AMD's at 50.8% and Intel's at 48%, first time in history. They've briefly crossed over in the past, but it seems like it's a trend where Intel is on the way down and other providers are on the way up. Intel's graphics cards are not in the conversation at all anymore. It's either Nvidia or AMD are the two main companies, with regards to graphics cards. Intel is just not even part of that conversation anymore. So it paints a picture of a company that is in decline.
But they're also, just to be very clear, AMD is also an American company.
Yes.
So it's not like... Yeah. So why is Intel special is the question.
Well, it's historically had ties to government. It grew out of the relationship, the sort of military-industrial complex type relationship in America in the Second World War. It has been, very closely sort of aligned with that Silicon Valley tech infrastructure. It helped to sort of build all of that up. And I don't know why they've got a grudge against AMD. It's clearly if the Trump administration was thinking correctly, which I know is a big assumption to make, they would be supporting Intel in order to help them compete against, Taiwanese and Chinese, sort of dominance in this area.
Foreign manufacturing as opposed to internal manufacturing.
It makes sense to have domestic manufacturing policy and boost areas of strategic importance where necessary. But it just doesn't seem like this, if anything, this does the opposite of that, because it's now burdening the company to ask them to provide returns to the shareholders, which is now the American government. It just doesn't, I don't see how this benefits them. I think it was just an end run around the CHIPS Act where they were like, oh, well, we can't, we'd have to overturn the CHIPS Act to stop this money going out, because the Supreme Court has said you can't just stop payments going out just because you don't like them. If it's legislated, it needs to happen. So they've basically done this as an end run around the Supreme Court. This is what I think. To go, okay.
You think it's purely political?
If we're forced to give this money out anyway, then we may as well get something for it. It's just standover tactics. That's all it is. It doesn't reflect anything about, what America's strategic interests are. They said they were going to ban the export of NVIDIA graphics cards to China. And then they said, actually, we are going to sell graphics cards, allow you to sell graphics cards to China, but you need to give us whatever, 15, 20% of the profits. It's literally fucking protection money. You got a nice graphics card company. It'd be a shame if something happened to it.
Intel's processors are more sort of what they're known for. But
they're CPUs,
yeah.
But what we can see is an expanding authoritarian creep into the American economy, which is really unprecedented as a country that prides itself on its freedom and liberty and free market capitalism and the invisible hand of the market jerking everyone off.
Are you saying that in this case here, we just need to let the market decide? Is that what George Soros in 2025 is saying?
No,
let the market decide. We don't need government intervention.
No, I'm just saying if it was Barack Obama doing the Fox News building
he'd be
in New York
Stalin.
would self-combust. He'd be Stalin. And no one thinks twice about it because it's it's Donald Trump. That's just what he's like. He's fucking
just making deals, bro.
Making deals.
Just making deals.
Just nationalizing industry like Castro. It's historically when this happens in countries that nationalize industry like this, in this way, in this coercive way, it's not good. You know, like I'm not the free market capitalism guy, but like, you know, in order for, if the way you have constructed your free market capitalism is all predicated on free markets and people freely doing free things as they see fit to maximize profit and shareholder value, to then come in and swoop in and say, fuck you, I'm the captain now, like that creates ripples in the economy where it changes the rules. It changes how people assess risk. It changes how they make investments. Like by your own logic, Republican Party, free market capitalism, you know, jerk-offs, this makes no sense against your own internal logic, against your own philosophy or stated philosophy. Who knows what the philosophy is now that Trump's in charge? But it's not good business. It doesn't make sense.
MAGA philosophy.
Yeah.
But you know, deals. That's all anyone cares about.
Anyway,
so that happened, and yeah, there's nothing anyone can do to stop it.
Seemingly not.
I don't think it'll change. I mean, Intel's share price took a little bump. There was a little bump to Intel's share price, but
yeah, because they were worried.
It was
the stop hitting yourself thing. It was like, well, if I stop punching you in the head, all of a sudden you feel fantastic. It's like, no wonder the stock price bounced back because everyone was pricing in a massive hit.
But when we say bounce back, like you compare it over 5 years, and it's like,
not doing great.
It's still at its lowest point.
Yeah. There's a great question which summarizes all of this. A great quote, rather. Quote, once the government becomes a stakeholder, the question is, what will they do to protect their investments, said Ben Bajaran, principal analyst at Creative Strategies. You don't want to force companies to choose Intel. You want them to willingly choose Intel, but you might need to create incentives like tax breaks. Because he's saying what we're seeing is potentially a situation where the government is now going to force other American companies to buy Intel chip. Like it just becomes, and obviously that makes Intel less competitive and less innovative, because if they know they've got guaranteed customers, there's no pressure for them to innovate. And like this is the exact problem that was identified by economists in communist countries, is because everything's centrally planned and everything's done for the sake of the dear leader, all of a sudden that competitive innovation, you know, research and development type activity, which is what we know creates productivity growth and makes economies grow.
Unless you're China, in which case
becomes unnecessary. Well, China's had their own way of working out how to do this, right? But yeah, they
incentivize, but they reward innovation, I guess, is the thing with China.
Yeah, and they punish people that don't innovate. That's the thing.
Yes.
Yeah, you know, I remember a colleague telling me that, you know, if you want to advance in the Chinese Communist Party system in China, that the expectation is that you will go and study at a foreign university for some time and bring back all the knowledge with you. That is expected if you're a Chinese, you know, high-level academic. You know, so it's not just that innovation is incentivized; it's also the lack of innovation and the lack of going and bringing stuff back is punished, you know, by lack of career advancement and things like that as well. So it's just not good. It's not good. It's not good for business. It's not good. That's bad.
Speaking of not good for business, Labor has announced in Australia, moving to Australia, that they are going to expand the 5% deposit scheme from October.
Stop it.
For first home buyers. So this scheme has been around since 2020. There was certain caps to it, like in terms of how many sort of grants that they would give out. Well, what it means basically is that you can buy a house if you're a first home buyer, with as little as a 5% deposit. The government will guarantee the other 15%, and you get away without having to pay lender's mortgage insurance. So it's the difference between potentially having to pony up, you know, for a house in Melbourne, 160,000. You can get a home with sort of 40,000.
Shall we explain all the ways that this is fucking terrible for the housing market, or like how do we want to approach this?
First thing I want to say, so just explain the scheme a little bit. So basically, you would go and you would apply for finance, and your broker would apply for this scheme. So that previously it was capped. Now they've said from October there will be no caps. There are no, when I say it's caps to the actual access to the scheme. They're also going to remove income limits. So it was previously
if you're earning to have 250 grand, you don't qualify for the scheme. Now it doesn't matter.
And I believe as well, and I could be wrong on this part, but they've either raised or removed the ceiling of how expensive the property actually
itself
is.
Can be. Yeah.
Now, these schemes have been around for a while. This has been in place since 2020.
You could say the first homeowners grant is just like another iteration of this, right? Like the idea is
the state government has the same
help
thing.
first homeowners into the housing market. We're helping.
Remove stamp duty with the first homeowners grant. The state government's been doing this as well.
Yeah.
But this is on a national scale, and there are no real caveats to this.
Yeah.
Now, Treasury's advice is that it should only inflate house prices by about 0.5%.
Over 6 years. Which
over 6 years.
Hi, over here. George Sipos.
Hi.
Yeah, hi. Keeping it real times. I have a question. Bullshit? Just bullshit, question mark? I'd love to see that analysis because that seems like total fucking horseshit. Where does that come from?
Love to see the Treasury numbers on this one because, of course, in a market where we have a housing shortage, this
adding an additional demand subsidy, like economics fucking 101, guys. Hi, more demand with the same amount of supply. Multiple choice answer. What does it do? Price goes up, or C, price definitely fucking goes up. Those are the only things that happen when you introduce more demand with the same level of supply.
So, I mean, as someone who's looking to get into the market, I'm looking at this scheme as well. But by the same token, I also know that, like, this could start a sort of bit of a bidding war situation going on with, particularly in the big capital cities where auctions are sort of the main method of sale.
For this exact reason, so people bid each other out of contention.
Yeah,
I understand the intention is to, and they've got a comparison table in here in this article, which we'll post, will say, the amount of years that it takes the average person to save for a 20% deposit in Melbourne, where their median home value is this, 800,000. To save up for 40,000 as opposed to 160,000 is going to take you 2 years instead of 9 years. I get it. That makes it more accessible for people with savings, that are minimal savings, to get into the housing market. The whole reason, however, that we have the 20% deposit rule and that most developed countries have some sort of litmus test like this is because you as a homeowner want that 20% buffer. Because if something happens, say for example, there's a global fucking pandemic and your house decreases by 5% or 10% in value, if you only own 5% of the value of your home and your home goes down 10% in value and you lose your job and you are forced to distress sell your house, you will sell your house, you won't recover all of the money needed to pay off your loan, you will lose your house, and then you'll be called what's called being underwater. You will still owe whatever, $50,000, $100,000 to the bank, even though you're homeless and don't have a house. You still owe the bank money because the asset that you have had to liquidate is now worth less than it was. So this is what happened during the global financial crisis in 2008 in America. Everyone goes, that it's the safest housing. It'll never go down. Except for one time when it does, and then all of a sudden, trillions of dollars in the global economy get liquidated because all of these people are now underwater on their loans. Their houses are worth nothing, and they're forced to sell them, and the whole economy crashes because everything is predicated on housing. Just as well, 1 in 3 jobs here in Australia isn't predicated on housing. Oh, wait, it absolutely is.
Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that people's borrowing capacity increases. But if you're forced to borrow 95% of the value of the loan, I mean, you're going to have it would necessitate a much larger mortgage. But my point being here is that there's no cap on the scheme. So as prices increase, the part that the government is guaranteeing will therefore increase as well.
And the government's on the hook for the remainder.
And if interest prices do start to continue to go down, although Michelle Bullock's being vague about it as usual.
Cut him, you coward.
Yeah. Then in theory, there's greater borrowing potential, which therefore means greater potential risk for the taxpayer. But also it means
we've seen this. We know this fucking graph. If interest rates go down, people can borrow more. People spend more on houses because they have to spend more in order to outcompete the other people who also have more access to capital and therefore can borrow more. It just all it means is interest rates
Prices
go
will go
down,
up.
house prices continue to rocket up. That is what will happen. And this, adding an additional demand subsidy, demand is not the problem, right? There's plenty of demand for Australian housing. The problem is we don't have enough supply. So this doesn't do anything to ameliorate the problem.
No.
All it is a Band-Aid over a gaping bullet wound to say,
the
first-time owners can maybe get into a house a little bit sooner. Aren't you fucking glad that Uncle Tony, Anthony Albanese, Uncle Tony came and fixed this problem for you guys? You're fucking welcome. Tinkering at the edges for the win. It's like, no, what we need is 1 million houses in 2 years. That's what we need to solve this problem if we're actually going to solve it, right?
So Labor also has their target of 1.2 million new homes by over 5 years, 2029. A lot of analysis is saying they're going to fall about 300,000 short of that.
Yeah. But the thing is, it's like, I don't know how much the government, because the government is not directly building houses. It's all about the incentives and things. They're tinkering around the edges to see if we can get more homes built. It's not like the government's building all of these houses. So what you've got is developers who would otherwise be building houses at this rate anyway, continuing to build houses at the same rate that they would otherwise build them for the most part. As like, what has the government actually contributed to this beyond, a little policy tinkering? It's really not going to do anything.
It's part of a larger problem, which is around and we'll talk about sort of how it relates to migration in a minute, but it's less around sort of the number, and to my brain, it's more about where you're putting these houses, and we need to think about in this country about population spread, not just about the number of people. It's about where are these people? Where is it good to have everyone in 3 cities? Can we spread things out more strategically? And we'll talk about sort of how that impacts the migration debate. But I guess and the state government here in Victoria is trying to rezone the green wedges around certain parts of the city to basically create small, denser areas around particular existing public infrastructure.
Middle density and higher density around transport hubs, train stations, things like that. That makes complete sense to me.
Yeah.
This doesn't do anything to address any of those problems with zoning and stuff is at the state, even the local government level.
Yeah.
It's not even really a federal government. Like if the federal government wants to do something, what they need to say is, here is $10 billion. We are going to spend this $10 billion on building houses that we will give away to poor people. That is what an actual intervention that would have a meaningful change on house prices would look like. The problem is that they're pulling from the same pool of labor that's already restricted that everyone else is. They're also competing with state governments who are doing big government infrastructure projects, doing all the level crossings and building fucking needless stadiums in Tasmania. So they're competing for the same 10 people,
to paint the house.
To paint the house. So it's like, all you're doing then is just injecting additional money into the system, which doesn't actually necessarily change things.
What you need to do.
There's no strategy. There's no strategy. You need to have
it needs to be strategy aligned with both federal, state and local level.
Yes, it needs to be a whole of government approach through all 3 levels, where we say we're going to skill up additional skilled migrants in the trades. We're going to pay for everyone to go to TAFE in any kind of building construction sector completely for free. We're going to bring in skilled migrants who have these skills in from overseas, give them a really easy path to citizenship. We're going to prioritize these areas for development, and we're going to flood them with affordable, high quality, low cost housing, and we're going to run it at a loss in order to get additional supply out of there, out into the market. There's a number of things that they could be doing to actually make a meaningful, like putting $10 billion into a future fund and then taking skimming off the top of that, the profits from that to put into something that goes in sideways a little bit into affordable housing. It's not going to cut it. These are 1% changes. What we need is a wholesale reimagining of the public housing system and the house building system that concentrates a whole of government approach onto, making this a sustainable, high growth sector going forward. They go, the construction sector is less productive than it was. It's like, okay, well, yes, part of that is red tape, but part of it is also standards. You don't want shoddy workmanship, shoddy construction developers building shoddy places that fall apart and are dangerous to people. Like, part of that slowdown represents regulation, which is good. It's not an easy problem to fix and just go, oh, we're just going to build a checks notes 1.5 billion, 1.5 million homes. It's like, well, it's obviously going to fail. You just lobbed a time bomb into your next election cycle because everyone knows it's not going to happen, right?
Another example of this is where it doesn't quite work is that, there's been investments in disability housing and grants provided for that. But the issue being is they're building a lot of this disability housing in areas, this is in Victoria at least, in areas that there's no amenities.
Yeah, exactly.
So, like, if you're disabled...
Here's your fucking ticky-tacky little boxes on the hillside. No fucking services. No GP. No hospital. No fucking transport. Here's just suburban, urban sprawl hellscape for miles and miles where everyone's on a 300 square meter block packed into next to each other. No fucking greenery. No fucking schools. No services.
It's an example of, the government handing out money, but, like, for a purpose, but without really any sort of requirements around
needs to be planned.
How you think about it.
The state and federal governments have been more than happy to cash the checks from the increased demand of migrants into the country, and they have done next to nothing to actually build out the infrastructure required to host additional people.
What about Sky Rail, George? There's been level crossing removals in the tunnel. There's a couple of tunnels.
I like the level crossing removal. I think it's well overdue. The problem is that we've only just now started making large global investments in our state infrastructure like 3-4 years ago, when it should have been happening 20, 30 years ago. They're happy to cash the checks from all the additional consumers. We would have been in a per capita recession. We were in a per capita recession last year. The only reason the economy was propped up was because of the influx of migrants. So we as an economy are perfectly happy to cash all the checks and have them come over here and spend lots of money on expensive international student education and live here and be consumers and be customers and pay tax. And we're happy to cash all the checks from that. But when it comes to actually like facilitating the growth of the population at large, all of a sudden, everyone puts their hands up and says, oh, it's not my fault. It's the other, whichever level of government I am, it's the other level of government that's the problem. And it might be good politics. It might make them look good to consumers to go, oh, great, this is great. I can try, I can go and try for a house. But in the words of Cameron Kusher, an independent property expert, he says it's only going to drive prices higher and increase competition for housing stock. Quote, it's good politics, it's not good economics. And I hate to be the guy that's like, look at the graphs, okay? Like we can see.
One of the ways that, like, for instance, they could tweak this would be, say, it's 5% deposit, but for new builds only. For instance,
at least make it somewhat targeted. So at least there's the auspices of like targeting it to a particular area of the industry. To just put more a demand subsidy, it's just so nonsensical. To get like the problem is not that there is not enough demand. If a government is wanting to subsidize an industry to create a demand subsidy, it should be because it's an important industry and there's not enough demand for it. So we're going to subsidize it. Right?
Like car sales are
something like that
declining. So therefore,
so we're going to subsidise Holden and
Ford
to make sure that they continue to manufacture here in Australia because it's ultimately good for us to have a car industry which has all of these other jobs, which they failed to do during the Gillard administration, as I recall.
Don't worry about it.
That would be a useful demand subsidy, right? Because it encourages, the multiplier effect of those dollars and retaining that in the Australian economy, which is a benefit to itself. This doesn't do anything. It just takes more money, more taxpayer guaranteed money. So if all of this shit goes sideways, guess who's going to foot the bill in the next fucking GFC financial crisis situation where housing prices take a dive? You want for yourself as a homeowner, you want that 20% buffer because it gives you a buffer if anything happens. 5% is nothing. You're counting on the house prices going up indefinitely forever like they're fucking Dutch tulips in the 17th century. Price number only go up. Nothing bad can ever happen. Famous last words. Concentrating all of the risk with the Australian taxpayer who, if this goes sideways, would have to foot the bill for billions, if not trillions of dollars in fucked housing stock. It's just, I can't, for the life of me, I cannot understand why the only response from this government is to further inflate the bubble. It's just like housing segment's too big to fail, and so we're just going to keep puffing and puff. It's a fucking Ponzi scheme. If you keep puffing the bubble up forever, it's going to pop. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
I can't think of a segue, but in the story that, well, there's been a few stories that the Australian government this week, but one thing that they have quietly pushed through with opposition support has been legislation to basically deport non-citizens to Nauru. Or a third country.
Am I having an acid flashback? Acid flashback? I thought we stopped doing that with Nauru.
No. So that was previously when they arrived by boat. These are people that are already here, but they're non-citizens.
But we're still going to send them to the torture camps in Nauru, which we said were unethical and inhumane. And
I think they're just going to get let loose in the community. Like, it's not like they're going to be in a torture camp. They're just going to be in Nauru, hanging out
in and around the torture camp.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
So this is basically related to a High Court decision a couple of years ago where they were like, all these people whose visas you've revoked or can't go, who haven't got citizenship, say, in like Iran or wherever it may be, all these people that don't really have a home, you can't actually keep them in, they're stateless. Yeah. You can't actually keep these people in indefinite detention. You have to release them. And then the court order came through and then the government freaked out and then was like, just a bunch of people were left just like let onto the street. These are people that the reason why they've had their citizenship revoked in Australia, for instance,
some sort of crime that they've committed or something, or
they're not some of them are
dudes.
Just
they're
not necessarily not necessarily all of them, but most of them are known to be or have done things in the past which
there were examples of very bad dudes in the Herald Sun. Let's put it that way.
Yes. So then the government freaked out, and then one way they've tried to do it is like, well, we're going to try and track you by putting bracelets on you, and then that was overturned by the High Court because you've got to give them some sort of, there's a right to sort of presumed, freedom, other privacy and all that kind of crap. So the latest legislation is that that the government will have the ability to basically take these people, 3 people in particular they're targeting to start off with, and move them to a third country of choice. So what's happened is
some sort of camp where they're all concentrated together.
No, it's not a concentration camp. They're just
I didn't say that. I just said a concentration, and it happens to be a camp. A concentration of people all together because of their political status in and around a camp. Okay, not a concentration camp. To be clear.
So we've signed an agreement with Nauru that we're going to pay Nauru however many $1 million over the next 5 years, whatever it is, to gradually move these people over to Nauru. Anyway, so the opposition was like, no, we can't. Oh, we haven't seen the legislation. The government's rushing this through. And then 3 days afterwards, they just like passed it anyway. They're like, we've got to make sure we take care of these criminals. These
criminals. Yeah, it's they couldn't be anti-brown people, So there was only one way the coalition could have voted on this, and it had to be the pro-racist side. Yep.
Tony Burke is been very clear to say, well, these are people that they've already had all their chances. They've had appeals. They've had their due process. These are the ones that are sort of left over. But what they're worried about is the fact is that it takes away this concept of procedural fairness, which is something that's basically been stopping this happening up until now. So, I
understand.
The concept being is that someone who is not a citizen of Australia still has the same right to a fair.
Yeah, they're still a person.
Yeah.
I understand the idea that just because another country has made a citizen of theirs stateless doesn't mean Australia should be obliged to make them a citizen, in order to, But I thought part of being a Western democratically aligned rule of law, international law, member of the UN type country was that you had to show a requisite amount of compassion for asylum seekers and refugees and understand their suffering. If someone's been made stateless, regardless of any crimes that they've committed, surely there's an equitable solution that we can come up with that allows them to exist and be people. without shipping them off to a fucking nowhere concentration camp. Like, surely there's got to be a better solution than that. Surely the answer to any question involving people with a little bit of melanin in their skin, surely the answer cannot always be fucking Nauru. Like, surely there's got to be a better answer to that question.
I don't know. Australia has this love of putting people on islands. I don't understand. I never will understand it.
Yeah. It goes back to the First Fleet, Adam. They're like, well, we can't have these criminals in Britain. Put them on an island. And then we get here to Australia and we're like, oh, okay, well, we understand all these Aboriginals were here. Don't worry about it. Terradalius. And we got all these criminals here because we were all criminals that got shipped here. What should we do? Put them on an island, Tasmania. Just keep shifting our problems to smaller and smaller islands as history progresses.
There was also the case of the sort of genocide in Tasmania with the indigenous population where they literally just shipped a bunch of them to an island and then they all died of disease.
Don't worry about it. It's fine. Don't look in the history books. They're lying to you, Adam.
There's some, I don't know, we're obsessed with islands.
We're the lucky country. Ignore everything you've read.
Just chuck it on an island. That's it. I wouldn't mind having a home on an island, a little shack or something.
They could go on an island,
conversation. So anyway, meanwhile, all this is happening. There's been an article out this week from the ABC that the Labor backbench for this particular term in Parliament, despite them being like over 100
dominant
in the lower house, are very quiet. So there was some other bits and pieces that happened this week, but there were opportunities, they have like meetings, they have, caucus. There are the periods where they can raise things and ask questions and debate internally. Obviously, Labor has the position that everyone has to be
on board.
On board, and we have to publicly put the same
toe the company
policies
line.
out.
Yeah.
But internally they can have those discussions.
It's a raucous caucus. Historically, the Labor caucus has rewarded people who were battlers. You look at the two people who were up for the Labor leadership last time round, Bill Shorten, Anthony Albanese, both of whom were famously raucous battlers. And yes, as Adam's making the stabbing motion, which doesn't translate well to an audio medium, but yeah, a certain amount of factional infighting is conducive, I think, to a healthy party. Now, you don't want to necessarily broadcast it on the national news media, but you want to have some kind of, it's called, in business circles, it's called red teaming, okay? You have an idea, you have a concept, you have a policy, you have some people that agree with it, some people that don't agree with it or pretend to not agree with it for the purposes of the exercise, and you stress test the idea. You steelman you create better ideas, better policy, by going through the exercise of debate and, disagreeing agreeably. And the idea is, this is what a party room is supposed to be, is you have challenge. You have backbenchers that say, hey, you guys on the front bench, you think this might work great federally, but actually my constituency is going to get fucked over by this. Maybe we need to rethink our approach. And that's been kind of the premise of Western liberal democracy here in Australia for the last 200 years, is that we have internal party challenges. And it just seems like we're in a kind of, because Anthony Albanese won so fucking hard at the last election and all these Labor freshmen members of Parliament feel as though they owe their jobs to Anthony Albanese, everyone's staying absolutely stum, but it's not conducive to, it's so funny because them winning so hard has made them more centrist, the Labor Party. It's like they've gone, well, everyone seems to love our small target centrism and tinkering around the edges, so let's lean into that even harder. Not let's take this opportunity to suggest reshift the paradigm, have a bold progressive agenda now that we've got the support of the entire fucking country. They're just you know what this means? Even more hardcore centrism. Fuck off,
that
guys.
has to wait until the second half of the second year.
We've got to wait till our fourth term, before we start actually proposing anything that might make a difference.
So the example the ABC gave in this is that each week in a sitting week, the the lower house members will all gather together to run through the agenda for the week. And they do a sort of press conference afterwards. And in this case here, it was a short meeting. There were no questions.
No questions.
Obviously.
They had a fucking asylum seeker concentration camp set up. Nobody had any fucking questions? No questions?
Not a concentration camp. We're just sending them.
No. When I say concentration camp, I just mean a concentration of people in a camp.
In and around the camp.
In and around the camp.
Not be in the camp.
Yeah.
Not just around the camp.
You're taking concentration camp in like the horrible, dystopian way in which it's intended.
There was that. And turns out there's been, a bunch of other stuff this week around Nazis this week. So
I generally have questions when Nazis come up. I don't know about you.
Yeah.
Apparently everyone in the entire Labour caucus is perfectly happy with Anthony Albanese. Thank you very much.
So if you've been living under a rock in Australia, this past week there were a number of anti-immigration rallies.
Yeah.
Why were there anti-immigration rallies? Well, there is a perception.
What were they called? The Australia...
I don't even know. I wasn't even...
I forget the name of the...
Australia First, some shit. I don't know.
Whatever
I actually don't know what they were called. I don't care. They're
it doesn't matter. Yeah, it's a fucking racist rally full of fucking neo-Nazis.
Yeah.
I saw these videos from people at the protests where they're like, oh, well, that guy that just spoke then, Thomas Searwell, is a neo-Nazi. Like, what do you have to say about that? They're like, oh, well, look, I don't necessarily... This guy's draped in an Australian flag. Oh, look, I don't necessarily stand with him, but as long as he hates immigrants sort of thing, then it's all right. And it's like, you are literally standing with him and attending a rally at which he is a speaker. Like, you are literally standing with him and his racist beliefs.
Mm. So... These rallies happened all over Australia. The biggest rallies were in Melbourne and Sydney. You might ask, why are we having an anti-immigration rally? Well, there is a perception that has been pushed, I would argue, by certain members of our political establishment.
The far right
immigration
and neo-Nazis, yes.
Well, we'll get to that.
And other mainstream conservative publications, yes. And people like Peter Dutton.
Yeah. It's also politically, for a long time now, we've been talking about what is the best, what is the number of what is the number of permanent migration that we need to have in this country, and that was a big topic last election for the opposition.
But there is a good faith discussion to be had about that doesn't involve fuck off the Browns, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
and what has outraged a lot of people is that the house price issue that we just spoke about has been tied to immigration. The reason why you can't get a house, the reason why house prices are going up is because immigrants are coming in and
it's the immigrants. They're taking your jobs. They're taking your house. We've seen this script. Are we this fucking dumb? How many fucking times do we need to see this script play out? It's not you. Yeah. It's not the billionaire that's holding all the... I sent you guys, you and Tom, that cartoon. It was Rupert Murdoch holding all the cookies. There's an Australian, worker guy, white guy on the right side of him with one cookie, and then a brown guy on the other side with no cookies. And then it's Rupert Murdoch saying to the worker, I think that brown guy wants your cookies. And it's like, the problem is the massive corporations and the billionaires not paying their fair share into the system, utilizing this system for their own profit, and then othering the last person in the door. Yeah. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, it was Muslims. Now it's Indians. Fucking 50 years before that, it was the Italians. 50 years before that, it was the Irish. 20 years before that, it was the Germans. Like, whoever the last person in the door is, the new kid on the block is always the fucking other. He's the guy that's the real problem. And guess what? They never are. But it's this fucking the absolute audacity with which these far-right politicians can completely unselfconsciously blame whoever it was the last person that came through the door without any sense of history or irony is frankly fucking astounding to me. Read a book.
Now, there is a discussion around, population increases in Melbourne and Sydney are an issue, but some of that's domestic as well, and that's a larger conversation, which we discussed before, around how various levels of government can spread the population out to potentially, increase and decrease demand in certain areas, right?
There's a difference between
Now,
how do we adjust housing policy and approvals, and
Yes.
how do we upskill people so they're more efficient, more productive in construction. That is a good faith discussion that needs to be had on the policy level. There is a big difference between that good faith discussion and dim immigrants taking your jobs and your houses, right? Which is what the discussion has turned into on the national level.
And that has been really driven quite hard, I think, since the last election, because it was one of the politicians, one of Peter Dutton's
Because Peter Dutton's talking points is we're going to reduce migration.
Points.
Never minding, if you run the numbers in the fucking budget, that would be disastrous for the economy because we count on these migrants for our economic growth, as I talked about.
Now, on top of that, you've also got the same sort of rallies happening in Europe. So in the UK in particular, these kind of rallies are becoming more frequent. People are standing outside immigration centres protesting. This is a
in the UK, they tried to burn down the asylum seeker hotels with people inside. Yeah. It was a full-on race riot.
So you've got there's a couple of things happening here, which is the local jingoism, which has been happening since the late 1800s.
1776?
Well, 1788. And you've got the influence of the international sort of anti-immigration thing as well. Now,
this whole network of, Nigel Farage over in the UK, you've got the far right and Trump administration and JD Vance and their whole kind of like, white supremacist, kind of nationalistic kind of thing going on. And they're networking. CPAC brings over Nigel Farage to go speak at their rallies over in the United States. It's a real international network of conservative far right, I don't even want to call it far right, jingoistic, bordering on white supremacist, neo-Nazi type thought.
And so why are we having these rallies? That's why. It's and
it's social media.
Confluence of all these factors.
Because all these fucking cunts can find each other now.
On top of that, as George has hinted, we here, particularly in Victoria and some parts of New South Wales as well, also have just a smattering of neo-Nazis to the mix. Now,
just a Sussan, just a snifter at Christmas.
The neo-Nazi movement, we've talked about this before, in Victoria in particular, is growing and has been a problem now probably for about 10 years. What they're very good at, and what they have done in this occasion, very strategically, is they have interwoven themselves into this larger anti-immigration movement.
They know people are under pressure from the cost of living, and they're using it as the basis to say, oh, we're not racists, but we hate the migrants, just like you do, and so maybe neo-Nazism isn't such a bad idea after all. All of a sudden, they're speaking at these rallies. They're part of this broader cultural movement that is, pushing back against migration as a scapegoat for all of the country's cost of living issues.
And they're able to sort of hide in plain sight, so to speak, because there are so many people in Melbourne and Sydney that attended these rallies. The rallies in other capital cities were much smaller and attended by counter-protesters as well. But in Melbourne and Sydney, it kicked off. There were scuffles in the streets. And very critically,
men dressed in black going and fucking beating the shit out of the, what was the
it wasn't beating the shit out of them, but it was...
Well, 4 women were injured and they were destroying property. Like, you got to see the video of this. The attack on Aboriginal protest site Camp Sovereignty is just the latest attack on First Nation sites and people. Indigenous leaders want it declared an act of terror. 4 women, and one of the people who was injured was talking about the terror in her eyes, seeing a young man, she described him as a white teenage boy, the smile, the glee in his face as he was assaulting her. Like, that shit is fucking terrifying. This is the sort of shit, kind of violent action is the kind of exact shit that led to fucking pogroms in Europe, that led to the rise of the Nazis in 1930s Germany. Like, it is exactly this stuff.
This is the kind of stuff the SA used to do.
Yes, this is what the brown shirts would do.
So the video in this case here shows a bunch of black-clad wearing men with weapons, so a bunch of them are carrying sticks, charging, running and screaming across an open area of parkland, a field, towards where this Indigenous demonstration and sort of site of activism has been happening now for a number of years. Yeah. And so they charge across this field, screaming, yelling and hollering, and obviously, terrified that the people that were there. Now, they eventually backed off. But yeah, not before there were scuffles and other bits
Assaults.
and pieces. And throughout the city, there were scuffles and interactions with, counter protesters were. The police basically lost control of it because the large group that was around Flinders Street initially broke up and splintered around the city. Now,
because these fucking neo-Nazis cannot help themselves. It's part of their mandate to insinuate themselves into the national dialogue and not cause large violent instances because that's how they stay under the radar. Yeah. Right? That's how they stay under the radar of law enforcement. Yep. But these violent young thugs cannot help themselves because these are the same kinds of people that became fucking Nazis. You know what I mean? Like, these are the guys, the violent fascist, fucking shitheads that just want to culturally erase anyone that is not white. It's the same type of guy. Yeah. They can't help themselves but be violent.
And they've done this before at the, anti... was it Moira Deeming? Who was the lady that spoke? The Victorian.
She was speaking out against trans.
Was it Moira Deeming?
Yeah,
I made that up. Yeah, I can't remember.
There was the implication that she was a neo-Nazi because these neo-Nazis were at the rally.
They just rocked up. They just rocked up at the rally.
But this is what they do. They insert themselves into existing conversations that exist on the far edges of the Overton window, the right at the far right edge of the Overton window of what's acceptable political discourse and not, and they just provoke. They just they just prod a little bit and just go,
all of a sudden,
hey, you're upset.
There's a fight with police.
You're upset with all these immigrants. Have you heard about neo-Nazism? And that's what they do. That's how they recruit. That's how they build their networks. Is staying right on the edge.
So Jacinta Allen came out and spoke out against this as the Victorian Premier. Sewell, who was the sort of the head of the Thomas Sewell was the head of the sort of Victorian Nazi movement. He's been in and out of court before, right, for various issues.
National Socialist Network. Like, they're not even trying to hide the neo-Nazi comparison anymore. Like, they're openly saying Nazi shit.
Yeah. He interrupted her press conference, but then was shortly arrested on 25 various charges. And has now been since denied bail as well. So
shame.
Sad day for neo-Nazis in Australia. Anyway, it's fucking terrifying. This whole thing here in Melbourne last week, particularly with the group running across the field with the sticks, dressed in black, absolutely terrifying. And how we have not classed this group, the National Socialist Network, whatever the fuck they're called, a terrorist organisation, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know how these guys are still able to operate. And look, there's also links that the ABC's pulled out between various overseas groups and where members will talk to each other.
Giving each other ideas, tactics, resources. This is de rigueur now for these type of groups.
Yeah. So if you think, maybe the people at the rally it's fair enough to have the conversation about anti-immigration. Like, these people are just patriots, No, we've got to have a discussion. If you're sitting going along with this narrative, have a think about it. Like, sit down and think about it for more than 5 seconds about what actually what's your problem? Like, is the problem, like, if you're worried about house prices, have a think about like the wider problems with the housing market in Australia.
They want a simple solution to the problem, and the simple solution is snowball is bad. The outsiders, whoever they are, the enemy of the people, the other, whoever it is we otherize, the Jews, the Browns, the whoever's, they're the problem. It's not us.
Yeah.
Oh, we're great.
And
it's the outsiders that are the problem.
And then you get political leaders like Jacinta Nampijinpa Price,
bro,
firing off.
Oh, boy. Jacinta Price.
So basically, she made I'm going to find her actual quote here. Somewhere.
Here it is.
She's since backtracked on some of her comments.
Okay, so Senator Jacinta Price told ABC's afternoon briefing on Wednesday that large numbers of migrants from India had come to Australia, suggesting Labor was favouring the group for electoral benefit. So if they, Labor, are going to see a reflection that, okay, these individuals are going to vote for us more so than the other parts of the community, well, then, of course, they're going to express the view that we'll get those sorts of individuals into our communities, which is literally great replacement theory fucking 8.0, we're going to get the undesirables into the community and they're going to vote for the Democrats / nominally leftist progressive party. We've seen this story play out how many fucking times? Great replacement theory, except this time it's Indians as opposed to Mexicans, as opposed to whoever. Like, it's just so transparently, obviously fucking horseshit.
Yeah. It's batshit. And anyway, so she's since sort of backtracked on it while not apologising. Sussan Ley has come out and said, oh, no, we support the Indian community. But she also hasn't apologised. Alex Hawke was not fucking happy about it. He rang up the Senator Price's staff and berated her staff member, then had to apologise for berating the staff member, but not directly apologising.
So berating the staff member deserves an apology, but impugning the integrity of the entire Labor Party, the entire Indian community, that doesn't deserve an apology. Okay, got it.
And to sort of assume as well that, like, the Liberal Party doesn't sculpt messaging for particular segments of the community.
Yeah, of course they do.
As well, it's just a weird argument. Like to
but
somehow
there's no
say
evidence
that,
to suggest that all Indian migrants are voting for the Labor Party. It's just it's simply not true. Like
most of them are
fairly conservative.
Some of the guys that I've talked to are fairly conservative.
Yes,
yeah,
which would make them naturally Liberal Party voters, right?
Yeah.
You know, if you were to choose a side.
There's a diversity of views, but
of course, in any cohort, there's going to be a diversity of views.
Yeah,
it's the point stands. It's like what she just said. Not only is it inflammatory, it's just also
alienates.
It alienates people, but it's also just fucking wrong. Like, it's just not true. Apparently, you can just fucking say things. I work so hard on this podcast not to fucking commit defamation, but apparently, if you're Jacinta Price, you can just do it against an entire nationality of people.
Some fucking parliamentary privilege, bro.
Oh my God.
Fuck you want. That's how Pauline Hanson hasn't been put in jail. She's got parliamentary privilege.
Well, not
so she
for
can
this.
Say whatever she wants.
She got done for something else, for voter fraud, as I recall. But yes.
Anyway, so Jacinta Price is, oh my God, she came over from the Nationals and is just, the Liberals, generally speaking, since the coalition, since they lost the election, has just been a dumpster fire of messaging. So, no wonder Labor's just like not doing anything particularly interesting because they don't have to, because the Liberals are self-sabotaging.
Liberals are just a dumpster fire, as you say.
But anyway, so all of this is to say that, the public discourse in Australia is pretty shithouse at the moment.
I mean, there's always been a dearth of the quality of the Australian discourse, especially when it comes to immigration. I mean, you listen to the rhetoric that the Howard government had about migrants and, the children overboard scandal, and the way Australians talk about, we had a white Australia policy up until several decades ago. Where it's like, we're only going to let white European cultures into, like, it has been a country that was founded on and supported by and largely enthusiastically supported the idea of white supremacy for its entire existence. We are a deeply racist country. And, all of a sudden we're acting like we're some sort of post-racial utopia and that all of this has come out of nowhere, this far-right neo-Nazism. It's been a strain that's been here the entire fucking time. And what infuriates me is someone who's the son of people who are born here, but the children of migrants from the Italian side and the Greek side. The ability, the way that the Howard government would talk about assimilation. Well, we can't have Muslims here because they're not going to assimilate with Australian values. What are Australian values, by the way? Just characterize that quickly for me. Anyway, but whatever. Let's put all that aside.
Shit.
The degree to which immigrants, like my ancestors, came to this country, assimilated, integrated, and then would turn around to the people that tried to come in the door after them, and then pull the ladder up, close the door behind themselves, and say, "Oh yeah, but we're the good migrants." The amount of racist shit I've heard Italian and Greek people say about whatever the next generation of migrants was after us is just astounding to me. The way they'll talk about, "Oh yeah, well they don't share our values. They're not white," and I'll say, "You're not white." We're not white. 50 years ago, we were the dark, greasy eye ties that everyone hated. All the things that they said about us are the things that they're saying about the new group. You don't see the connection? You don't see that it's just about A system that's founded on white supremacy and racism? It doesn't matter who the fucking scapegoat is? You don't see the connection?
So if you're reading the news and you see a story about any of this, just have a think. Just have a little bit more of a think. Think through it just a little bit more. And
I've got another graph before we go.
Oh, a graph.
A graph.
A graph or a graph?
A graph.
A graph.
A graph, darling. What we can see is, there's been a lot of talk about migration. And Jacinta Price said, Labor's opened the floodgates. Migrants are out of control. They're coming here to take your wife and take your kids. That's obviously not the case. What we saw, what we've seen, you look at here, this graph over the last 10 years, the sort of net overseas migration here was sitting around roughly, between 200 to sort of 250,000 people. Net migration is people, it takes into account people coming in, people coming out. The amount of surplus people.
Permanent, non-permanent visas, different types of.
There's different types of visas and all that sort of stuff. What we can see is that it plunged from 240,000 people a year during the pandemic, unsurprisingly, because we shut the borders, to negative 94,000 people. And yes, it has in recent years shot up to 555,000 people in June of 2023, September of 2023. But as we can see, it's dropping down again to 455,000 net migration. So it is higher than it was pre-pandemic.
And trending down.
And it's trending down, exactly right. And that's the key thing to remember here. Where all this talk, all this, the way that people ginning up fear of migrants, saying that there's some sort of flood, all we've seen is a correction from the, back, to the pre-pandemic levels. What we saw was a bunch of bottled up demand during the pandemic because nobody was really coming in or out. Fortress Australia and all that. And then what you're seeing is the pent-up demand from that period coming through in the year or two subsequent to the pandemic. But now it's dropping back down to historical levels. There is no influx of migrants, no storm of, barbarians at the gate coming to take your jobs and your houses and your wives and your children. That is simply not the case. What we saw was a period of no migration and then a period right after that where all that pent-up demand came through, right? And now we're seeing it return to normal levels. So all of the hot air that's been blown about this by the various politicians that want to stoke anti-migrant rhetoric for their own political gain is all based on a lie. It's all based on an actual falsehood that there's some sort of migrant problem. There is no problem here in Australia.
Some sort of jingoistic marketing campaign that the Liberals tried to put out as a policy.
White supremacy.
Prior to the last election, and it's catched on.
I really don't want to be the white supremacy guy, but I really don't know how you can explain all of this, but for the fact that there is a large contingent of quiet, racist Australians that are just sitting in their fucking, 5-bedroom wraparound patio house somewhere in Tasmania going, just fucking hate those guys. I don't know what it is about these Indian IT workers that I fucking hate, but there's just something about them that I fucking hate. There's just a massive contingent of fucking racist people here in Australia that are now feeling as though they've got their voices heard by these fucking neo-Nazis. It's disgusting what it says about us as a country.
Without this immigration,
our country would be in the fucking toilet. Undeniably, our economy would be in the fucking... Who's going to look after your grandma when she's sick in her bed, when she's dying in fucking hospice care? Because no fucking white Australians want those jobs, right? The care economy, the people who service economy, the people who bring you your fucking Deliveroo bag. Who's going to do those jobs if not for the migrants? Our economy would collapse if it weren't for migration. And the fact that we don't have an understanding of that, we don't have a gratitude towards these people that are struggling and trying to earn their way through and pay taxes into the Australian economy. The fact that we demonize these people speaks poorly of only us. How disgusting and privileged can we be to take the least of society, the people who are struggling the hardest, and turn them into victims, into scapegoats? It's disgusting. I'm profoundly disgusted to be Australian sometimes.
It's a pattern that's, as we've said, that's happened
so many times.
Over so many times, 15 years ago, more than that, 20 years ago, it was Cronulla, riots in the streets. The Lebanese,
it was the Vietnamese,
gangs,
it was the Chinese, and then it's the Muslims, and then it's, it's the same shit over and over. I've only been politically active for 20-something years. How can I see the patterns? And people, much older than me in positions of power don't. Or do they refuse to see it? And they know they're bullshit artists and they're stoking outrage for profit. I really think people like Nigel Farage, I don't know if he really believes the stuff that he says, or if or like Jacinta Price, he just sees it as a way of
I think he's an opportunist.
And seizing power.
Yeah.
He's just an opportunist, and he'll say he knows that it's corrosive to society and democracy. She knows that it's corrosive and divisive. She doesn't care because it helps advance her personally.
Yeah.
And so she's willing to say and do whatever. That is almost more concerning to me, is the real fucking sociopaths that are happy to knife people.
Just to buy into it.
To create a system that they know is divisive and will hurt people in order to advance themselves. That's fucking crazy to me.
Like, what I'll say about Pauline is that at least she's sort of consistent. Do you know what I mean? Like,
she's legitimately a racist. She really believes that shit.
Has been, rocks the same since mid-90s.
Yeah, it was Asians and then Muslims, but she's been consistently wrong her entire career.
But yeah, you can see the calculus with Jacinta Price.
I think so. It feels calculated. Like, she'll do and say she's a member of the Nationals. She doesn't give a shit about the Nationals. Now she'll be a member of the Liberal Party. And maybe once she's gotten enough of a national profile, she'll go and become an independent and, form her own Jackie Lambie network. Whatever she needs to do to advance herself is the thing that she will do. And that's scary to me, because those kind of people, that's hard to stop them, right? Because they don't believe, like Trump, he doesn't believe anything. He's completely malleable to the situation. He'll do and say whatever he needs to do to get power. And it's hard to stop someone like that when they don't have any shame, when they don't have any, it's a Frank Underwood type character.
Looked sort of like that. That's very bold. People can't be like that in real life. And it's like, well,
there are people like that, unfortunately. My therapist recommended a book to me called Snakes in Suits, right? Which is all about how narcissists and sociopaths rise up in, power structures. And if you think about it, it kind of makes sense, because if they have no allegiances, if they have no compunction about throwing someone under the bus to advance themselves, well then, they are more likely to rise. And so what you see is a higher proportion of narcissists and sociopaths at the top levels of corporations, of government, business, industry, than you do in other walks of life, because they've gotten there by trampling on the corpses of the people they've thrown under the bus over the courses of their careers. So I do wonder if...
It's a nice little way of tying it back to Benjamin Netanyahu at the start, because
it is.
I think
come
he
full
definitely
circle.
falls into that category. But speaking of going on too long, I think we need to wrap this up.
On that note, we are, and we always will be Unnatural Selection. Make sure you visit us at our salubrious home on the web, unnaturalshow.com. Make sure you follow us on all the bullshit social medias that are ruining the world, that have, do, or ever will exist, at our handle at Unnatural Show, such as Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and mother flipping TikTok. You can follow us there. You make sure you follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at George Tsipos.
And you can follow me down to my local mortgage broker, where I'll probably be actually taking advantage of this 5% deposit scheme, because I'm desperate. So, shit.
Thanks for listening, guys. I'm sorry I yelled so much. Thanks for listening. We had a week off, and like the pent-up migration demand, I had pent-up yelling in the podcast demands over the last couple of weeks. So it's just had to release that, and now I can go ahead and proceed with my life and not, throttle anyone on the street. So it's important that I get it out. But
it's good for his mental health.
Yeah, not so good for yours, the listener, but great for mine. My heart is beating so fast. Thanks for listening, guys. Love your faces. See you next week. I think I'm going to have an anxiety attack.
You might need to go and release something else to...
Okay, all right.